How much doubt do you have in Josh Heupel after the way this season played out? Some, everybody should have some. Was it Nick Saban's second season that they lost to Louisiana Monroe at Alabama, John? Is that right?
No,
I
first.
thought it was his first season.
Okay,
This is
first
first.
season. So there would be reason to have concern there. So you should have concern with any newish coach. So I've got some as a choice, enough, too much. So too much is you're pretty much worried at this point. You're concerned about the future of the program under Josh Heupel. Some is very understandable. Too much, I think, is where a lot of people are going to fall, John, because I think people did have that blind loyalty and love before the beginning of the season. And the way this season's played out, I think people have taken that confidence level and ratcheted it down a bit. What do you hear from the community?
Yeah, there's definitely that's what my inbox reflects. And I always make a distinction. It's one thing to criticize a coach and say you should have done this differently. I don't understand why you did that. I'm concerned about personnel matters, as opposed to say, well, we got to get somebody else. We know what happens most often when Tennessee says, I got to get somebody else. Blind loyalty is an extreme that leads you in step with Jeremy Pruitt. Let's follow him to the promised land. No, that won't work out. But so I think yes, there are a lot of concerns. These aren't, but the first 2 years were very unusual. It was an upward trajectory. I think Josh Heupel's a really good offensive coach. Um, I guess the things I question, and the biggest thing, and we've talked about this before, but he knows what his offensive system can do. He knows what quarterbacks look like in his offensive system. He's been doing this a while as an offensive coordinator, as a head coach. Why did he ever think Joe Milton would fit this offense?
I think that's the number one concern. So, want to be clear, nobody's suggesting that Tennessee is due for a coaching change. Goodness knows they don't want to go about that. But let me get into the message board thoughts as well. SC Scout guy, who's a South Carolina fan, so I do like to get his opinion. I don't think you should have any concern with Josh Heupel. He has Tennessee at about the point that I think they should be in this day and age. Tennessee is never going to be elite like UGA and Bama. It is just reality. Your thoughts on that comment, Caleb?
I think there is I would say some concern, but I would say very, very slight. My slight concern is, and it's been a thing for me for a while, is talent evaluation. It's the same concern that honestly I think people are talking. It's funny, people are talking about the Patriots and Bill Belichick right now, and I think the biggest issue with Bill Belichick is not Bill Belichick the coach; it's Bill Belichick the GM, because he's just missing on talent left and right. I think
But
Josh Heupel.
Caleb, can I stop you for a second? Talent evaluation is a big one. I mean, that's a big
Let me finish. I think it's slight. And here's why I think it's slight. I think he missed on Joe Milton. I think the odds are low that he would continue to miss on quarterbacks, quite honestly. I don't think the odds are that high. And I also think, given Josh Heupel's system, I think in an age of NIL, if Josh Heupel gets the right quarterback, and I think he's got the right quarterback from next year with Nico, if he can, Nico should help him get Tennessee to a certain level, and then NIL will help on top of that. That will allow Tennessee to be on the level to recruit with the top dogs. And when you're recruiting among the top dogs, I'm sorry, Dave, I know you covered it. I don't think talent evaluation is that big of a deal. I mean, I'm sorry, I've said this before. I could get my wife to look at 5 stars and she could be like, "Oh, they're great. You should recruit them." There's not a lot of evaluation when you're recruiting once you're recruiting at that level.
John, there is something to that. I mean, when I go to camps, and I have over the years, the 10, 15 best guys at the camp. You don't have to be Caleb's wife to figure that out. It's really not that difficult. So what Caleb is saying is that Tennessee will thrust themselves into the battle of the top 5 and 4 stars, basically what you're saying, right, Caleb? And that they'll win some of those battles and everything will be fine. John, thoughts, Mr. President?
Well, that's possible. I think the talent evaluation, you're not recruiting a class of 5 stars. I think the talent evaluation comes in when you're recruiting 3 stars, because some of these guys turn into 5 stars. and coaches can do that. Usually do pretty well. I'm not saying you win with all 3 stars, or Vanderbilt would not be knocking on the college football playoff door. Maybe you've got to get the right 3 stars. That's the distinction. And I think we talk about talent evaluation. I think it's paramount in the transfer portal. You've got this wave, and it's going to be a crashing wave of players starting December 4th that come into this transfer portal. I don't think we haven't seen anything like what's coming. It's going to be all over the place. So you've got all these players to choose from, and it's not as though you've been looking at them for 3-4 years. They haven't been in your camp, probably. Maybe some have. But you're looking at all these guys, and you got to make a decision, and you have to make a decision pretty fast because most of them already have an inkling of where they're going when they go into the portal. They have some idea, but that's where it's going to be crucial. We've seen it. Tennessee's got some transfers. Hendon Hooker, Jeremy Pruitt recruited him. That was a monstrous get. He became a All-American caliber player. Joe Milton, not so much. But there are these other guys. You look in the offensive line, you look at defensive back, you look at all these different positions. That's where you're going to determine your success. I mean, I think Tennessee's next season, its record can be very much affected by what happens in December with these transfers. I mean, how many freshmen are really going to help you next year? I just think it's going to be those transfers, and that's where the evaluations become extremely important.
Yep. And Caleb, I want to get your take on that. So let's change gears. Can Tennessee change the direction of their program with just transfer portals? I've started to use the word save UT. Caleb, is that too strong? I mean, save UT from 8 and 9 win seasons and take them to the championship level. Is save too strong, Caleb, before we change gears and get to the transfer portal and what Tennessee might be looking at?
I don't think, save is too strong. You can't save your program with transfers. You can't do it. You're not going to compete with the Georgias and Alabamas with just transfers. You're never going to compete with them. You can maybe be like a Lane Kiffin and get lucky every other year and land and just strike gold in the transfers you pull in, so you have a 10-2 season. But nobody's looking at Lane Kiffin doing that in Ole Miss and thinking that he's going to win any sort of championship doing that.
Including Lane Kiffin. He's not happy about the way things are going and the lack of consistent transfer portal players that are coming in.